MSPs scrutinising the bid to legalise assisted dying have declined to say whether the bill should be backed or rejected at Holyrood. The Health Committee said it is a matter of conscience, but it highlighted a series of important factors to be considered, including the possibility that eligibility could be widened through court challenges. In a moment, we'll be hearing from the committee's convener. But first, I asked Liam MacArthur, who's piloting the bill through Parliament, for his reaction to the report.
Well, I think it's pretty comprehensive and detailed. I think the committee has heard a lot of evidence over recent months and has received quite a lot of written evidence as well. And I think the report reflects that. I think it's set out the different issues, and I'm sure we'll make a contribution ahead of the stage 1 debate and vote next month.
It made no recommendation on whether the committee supports or opposes the bill. There's a few MSPs still on the fence or waiting for that before making their decision. Does it fill you with confidence that they've not rejected it out of hand, or is it a bit of a blow to not back it?
Well, I think it was always likely on a vote that was going to be based on conscience, it was going to be a free vote, and all the parties agreed that pretty much at the outset. It was unlikely the committee were going to take a formal view on the general principles. I think they saw their role as amplifying the evidence, raising the issues, highlighting the issues, and that's very much what they've done. I think it's up to MSP colleagues to read the report, to reflect on its findings, and come to a decision as to how they vote.
And are you confident about that? Your bill passing at that first vote?
I think the political mood has changed significantly, and I think MSP colleagues across the parties have broadly been looking for reasons to support rather than excuses to oppose. I think there's some reassurance as to what we see happening in places like Australia and New Zealand, a number of the states in the US, where laws of this type have been operating very successfully with great public confidence and indeed the confidence of the medical community for some time. That gives a degree of reassurance. We need to get the detail right, but as I've been explaining to colleagues, we only get the chance to get into the detail if they back the general principles.
One of the details the committee wants you to get right is tightening up the laws around the potential for coercion in this. What are you going to bring forward that will satisfy MSPs?
Well, I think the safeguards that are in the bill very much speak to those concerns already. The assessment by two separate medical professionals, not just on the terminal illness and mental capacity, but the rationale for why an individual has come to that decision. Coercion is something that medics are accustomed to assessing. I think with a change in the law around assisted dying, I think that the training around coercion would certainly need to be updated. So I'm very keen to see the amendments come forward at stage 2 to see if there are further things we can do.
Liam MacArthur, thank you very much. Well, for more on the legislation, I spoke with Claire Hawkey, the Health Committee's convener. Claire Hawkey, why did the Health Committee decide not to make any recommendation on the assisted dying bill?
So the Health Committee took a huge amount of evidence from a variety of stakeholders, both individuals and organisations, and people who support the assisted dying bill and those who oppose it. And we're very grateful for the evidence that they gave us. We also collected a huge amount of written evidence, over 20,000 submissions to our call for evidence. The committee ultimately decided that the choice for MSPs was one of conscience, and so we made no overall recommendation for voting for the bill or against the bill.
And do you think that's a bit of a cop-out? There's a lot of MSPs waiting to see the guidance from the committee as they decide how to vote.
Well, this was a cross-party unanimous decision from the entire committee. I think it's important that we lay out the evidence that we have scrutinised, that we have made recommendations should the bill progress to stage 2 about areas that we think need further clarity. But this is a matter of conscience for individual MSPs.
Have you decided how you will vote?
As convener of the committee, I have made no public statement whatsoever about what my views are. I scrutinised the evidence when it came in front of committee. I'll listen to the stage 1 debate very carefully, and I'll make my decision.
Getting on to some of those recommendations that the committee made, one of those was around about the prospect of a legal challenge being raised, the concern that this could see the bill be widened beyond its original scope. How likely do you think that is based on the evidence you've seen so far?
Well, we heard evidence from colleagues overseas about how legislation had changed over time there in some countries, but not in others. I think ultimately at stage 2, should the bill pass stage 1, this is an area that should be looked at, and there really needs to be clarity around the issue of whether the scope of the bill could or should be expanded.
And one of the things the committee noted or said should be looked at if this bill does progress further is a sunset clause where MSPs would essentially be able to vote on it again after a certain period of time. Could that help alleviate fears of people who think it could just creep and expand without proper oversight?
Well, the committee noted that in its report. It didn't make recommendations around that, but certainly it's something that should be looked at further should the bill progress to stage 2.
One of the other controversial proposals in the bill is for the age that people can access assisted dying to be 16. How much of an issue is that for the committee?
So the committee did hear evidence about that particular issue, and Liam MacArthur did say that it was an area that he could look at should the bill progress. And certainly it's an area that the committee noted in its recommendations that the eligibility criteria, not only of age but also of residency in Scotland, should be looked at and clarified.
One of the other areas that Liam MacArthur said he will look at, was welcomed by the committee, was around updating guidance on coercion of people into assisted dying. What does the committee need to see from Liam MacArthur if this bill progresses to be satisfied and comfortable on this issue?
The committee took a lot of evidence about coercion, and certainly heard both in written and in oral evidence about concerns about coercion and about the process of assessing coercion. There would certainly need to be clear guidance for healthcare professionals in that area should the bill progress, and we would be keen to see that at stage 2 if we get to that point.
And is the worry here that people who are perhaps not fully competent to make a decision, or competency was something else raised in the committee, is the concern that people who may not be fully competent to make this decision are essentially forced into it by family members with malicious motives?
Well, certainly the area of competence was another area that the committee made recommendations on, and there needs to be some strengthening there and some clarity around about that too. We also received evidence from the Royal College of Psychiatrists, for example, around about that area, about assessing competency. And so we need to make sure that if this bill does progress, that there are robust safeguards there for people.
So I think another area that you raised in terms of safeguards was the fact that there's not a life expectancy on what defines terminal ill. You know, it's how you measure that. How much of an issue is that, given the difficulties you know from your previous professional life of putting an accurate figure on how long someone will have to live when they have a diagnosis like this?
I think we recognise that it is often very difficult for medical professionals to give a very accurate prognosis of when someone is likely to die. So clarity around about that area is certainly needed within the bill, and hopefully if the bill did go to stage 2, it would be an area that would be scrutinised, and that Mr MacArthur would come forward with proposals for ensuring that that's as robust as it can be.